time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Bill Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
Really excited about it. Should be a great crowd. It's good to be back in Charlotte. I think it's a sellout already and all that type of stuff. So game day and you know, whatever comes with that, it's fun. Be great. It's 4 quarters, man. 4 quarters away from having a chance to go back to the playoff, and you know that's what we're all shooting for.
You know, I mean, we're in a great position. So why would I, be worried about what's on the other side of the fence? And I've always felt that way. And if people have interest, that's part of it. You either decide to listen or not. And right now, we've got a tremendous opportunity this week playing for a championship. And my loyalty is to here and our players.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Talking Tuesday. Once again, it has not ended. We still have 4 teams in our state practicing college football this week. Yes, we do. Can you name them?
Clemson.
1.
Wofford.
2.
Furman.
3.
Coastal Carolina.
Not many people probably realize Coastal has a game Saturday at home against Georgia Southern. Be their last game. Their next game after Coastal plays Georgia Southern, do you know where their next game will be?
Spring game. I don't know.
Real game. Will be in Columbia against the Gamecocks.
Oh, yes.
They open up next year in what should be the return of Joe Moglia to the sideline for the Chanticleers. But today it's Clemson. Clemson Talking Tuesday, 800-956-7266. Of course, we'll still talk about the game Saturday past, but look ahead to the game Saturday coming. Clemson and the Miami Hurricanes. It was press conference day up at Clemson today with Dabo Swinney and the players. And Will went up there. Pro, by the way, is not with us tonight. And I imagine it was kind of a mixed bag between talking about the game and then talking about Brent Venables being linked to Arkansas and Mississippi State and perhaps others to come.
Before I start, can I put a moratorium out to the callers? No more talk about the bottles. Like, we're done with the bottles.
Yeah,
we've come to a consensus on that. It's bad no matter who does it.
Yeah,
I don't want to hear any more.
Let me say this. Somebody sent us a link to a YouTube. They put it on our Twitter. I looked at it last night from the 2012 game up at Clemson. That was a game USC won. That was the game Connor Shaw was hurt and Dylan Thompson was the emergency starter, went in and won the ball game. And this person sent this to our link just to show that, yes, in that game, during a time when there was a controversial play, it involved Bruce Ellington and a pass interference call against Clemson. There was a bottle thrown from the stands onto the field, and it came from behind the team, from the sideline stands, not the end zones. So the point was, the caller was trying, or the poster was trying to make the point that, hey, it happens at Clemson too.
It doesn't matter.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's frowned upon everywhere. It's frowned upon. It should be frowned upon everywhere, and it should be dealt with everywhere.
To move forward, as we do, going towards the ACC championship, Dabo Swinney did have his usual media availability on Tuesday for this week. We'll get a chance to hear from him again on Friday as they get ready for their championship game against Miami. A lot of respect, as you would expect from him, for this Miami group. A much different team than they saw a couple of years ago with that 58-0 beatdown. Of course, Mark Richt, they have a lot of experience against each other, not only with his time, obviously, in this conference, but now, obviously, going back to his time at Georgia. They played that home-and-home series in 13 and 14, so there's some experience there from at least Mark Richt coach teams. But he says, when he looks at the film on this Miami team, he says it looks a lot like Clemson's defense. It looks a lot like what they do schematically and also the level of players that they have. Biggest turnover margin in the country, and a lot of the other stats they are very, very high in from the defensive side of the football. I wouldn't say they're a vanilla offense, but they are an offense that is not necessarily the best that Clemson has seen this year. Clemson has played better offensive football teams this year than Miami, but Miami is incredibly balanced. So it's one thing that's good about them is that they will let whatever the game dictates. They will let whatever the game dictates as far as that goes to how they will attack Clemson. But A lot of the other points remain valid when it comes to health. Trey Lamar still day to day, so that's something that obviously people were thinking about. Travis Etienne, I know we had a lot of questions after the game about his involvement. They say he's fine after getting banged up against South Carolina, and as far as that goes, they're basically somewhat healthy. They were about as healthy as they could have been going into the South Carolina game. You could see a little bit more of J.D. Davis and James Skalski playing at linebacker if Lamar cannot go, but they are very encouraged by Lamar's progress. And as you mentioned, a lot of the talk about Brent Venables and the rumors that continue to pile on from not only Arkansas, Mississippi State are two openings that his name's been connected with. We'll play you some of Brent Venables' sound here coming after the top of the second hour. Dabo Swinney's comments were very pointed and short. He says that I don't really pay attention to that stuff. It's all up to God, and I'm not God. That was basically the gist of what he had to say.
You mean he finally admitted that?
He admitted that he was not God, or that he is a God.
Good.
So from that perspective, they're not concerned about that.
Some people won't believe that, by the way.
Reiterating the statement he made on the ACC teleconference Sunday about the fact that they're focused on Miami, Brent Venables said as much as well. I asked him whether or not he was, quote, annoyed or flattered by all the attention he gets, and he actually used the word annoyed because it seems like you guys bring this up every year, and I'm still here. And he's always said he loves his job, and you know, I take him at his word as long as I see him in Clemson purple and orange. As long as you see him in Clemson purple and orange, you can believe him.
Well, look, now listen, you've been around enough and smart enough, and we all are.
Yes.
To realize how coaches deal with this stuff.
Of course.
Dan Mullen said after the Egg Bowl, you know, and this had to be his, I can't quote him exactly, but he said, hey, I'm the coach at Mississippi State, and I plan on being here. But you know as well as I do, I believe Jimmy Sexton is his agent. You know as well as I do that behind the scenes, coaches have their agents working on deals.
Of course.
They can deny knowledge of it, but you know that in terms of their own firsthand activity in a potential job, but you know they've got their representatives working behind the scenes, and they're being kept abreast of, hey, does this school want me? How much is it willing to pay? What's the buyout? All the particulars. So they can sit there and talk to a press conference on a Tuesday or a press conference after a game. Plausible deniability,
of course, is
what they apply, but we know behind the scenes what's going on. So anyway, in his case, he's got, of course, a son who is coming to Clemson.
Yes. He's
got a younger son who's been offered by Clemson. He's got a great thing going. But if you're Brent Venables, you have to really think about this. If I'm Brent Venables, I look in the mirror from a coaching standpoint, I see one hot dude. I mean, his stock right now
couldn't be higher.
It couldn't be higher. As an assistant coach, it's not going to get any higher. And, you know, all it takes is one slip up of a year to see all that go away. So his marketing level right now is extremely high. I don't know if he's offered a job in the SEC as a head coach. How in the world could you turn it down?
Well, the thing about his kids, like that's stuff that can be taken care of. Like that's stuff that you could change. They could very, very easily be offered to the others. If they're being offered by Clemson, I guarantee you, wherever school he goes to, they'll probably want to offer him as well.
Not necessarily, because Dabo has a history of offering the sons of Tiger coaches or former players, even if
they're not good.
Well, I'm not going to say they're not good, but when they wouldn't be recruited by other people at that level. Now, the Davis brothers, the judges' sons, are a good example of that. They were not heavily recruited coming out of Daniel. It's turned out, though, they're very usable, good players coming in a reserve role.
That's more credit to Dabo on finding a place for them. But what I'm trying to say is, I'm not letting that be a barrier to whether or not I take a job at, say, in Arkansas or Mississippi State. And correct me if I'm wrong, but, you know, we've heard him bandied about for, you know, mid-major conference jobs and jobs that are head coaching jobs that wouldn't necessarily be as prominent as the ones he's been offered this year, or at least been connected to this year. He hasn't been offered necessarily anything, but Arkansas, Mississippi State, these are the two best jobs that he's been connected with that are open.
Absolutely.
I would say.
A lot of people have thought, me included, that he's just been waiting on his alma mater, Kansas State, to open up eventually.
I think these two jobs are better than Kansas State.
Well, there's no question. You get a chance to be a head coach in the SEC. That doesn't come along every day. 800-956-7266. We'll hear from the Tigers. David Shelton with a preview of the 2A championship as well. Back in a moment.
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Sports talk on a Tuesday. Columbia Main Street. We are the Sports Talk Show of Main Street, South Carolina, from the coast to the mountains. Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, and Brian Leonard with you tonight. 800-956-7266 is our phone number. If you'd like to join us, coming up, we're going to hear from Dabo Swinney talking about Miami and talking about Mark Richt. Also, we will hear from Clemson basketball coach Brad Brownell. The Tigers playing in the ACC Big Ten Challenge tomorrow. They'll be up at Ohio State. ACC won the first two games last night, so they're off to a good start. USC pulled away and beat FIU last night, and Chris Silva had a night, 26 and 10, I think it was for him, career high, 26. So he's playing really good basketball, and I think that Frank Martin in particular was pleased by the play of his point guard and the way that he ran the offense and settled things down this time, and feels like they're making a good bit of progress in that area. The Gamecocks next play Thursday night, Madison Square Garden against Temple.
Could I just say how absolutely weird it is that Syracuse versus Maryland is a matchup in the Big Ten ACC Challenge?
That is weird.
A former ACC school that's now in the Big Ten and a former Big East school that's now in the ACC. It's so just mind-blowing to me.
It is crazy.
I wanted to do something real quick just to close the book on the Venables stuff, because not that you nor I know the man personally, but from what we've noticed about him, he's a different cat, right? So maybe he just doesn't necessarily want to be a head coach. And we and I have both known coaches who've said that repeatedly, and they've gone one of two ways. They've been career coordinators, and I've known guys who were career defensive coordinators. The defensive coordinator at Missouri, for example, said for his entire time that he didn't want to be a head coach, and now he's the head coach at Missouri State. So it goes both ways. So, I take him at his word until he proves me wrong, and we've been proven wrong time and time again as far as that thing goes. So as far as we're concerned, as far as his words that he's saying now, I take him at face value.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think he's totally focused on the task at hand. One thing about Venables is that he has the ability to close out the noise, at least publicly. It looks like he focuses on the next opponent, and everything goes into that week. He closes the book on that, and he moves to the next. But again, he has a representative. He's got an agent, don't know who it is. He's got somebody working in the background for him. If he says, hey, go respond to that for me, or go check that out for me, and they do the work and they report back to him, I got to believe, like any coach, he's got a little bit of his mind on the future and where he might be able to go to better his life professionally and his family's life.
I will say this, though. It will not be like when Chad Morris left and you can promote from within and get a Jeff Scott and a Tony Elliott. A Venables loss for this coaching staff would be astronomically huge, because he is a star. He is a star.
As far as the Tennessee situation goes, from what we've been reading today, it looks like they're talking to Gundy at Tennessee with a lot of interest there.
Why would he leave that job to go to Tennessee?
Money. I just guess money, though. Oklahoma State's got a lot of rich people supporting that program, and you wouldn't be surprised if they would let him walk away simply for money. You would think that would be part of it. Maybe just the idea of the SEC for him, the SEC East, which looks, like it's wide open for anybody who wants to step in and take a shot at it.
Well, they could take all that money they didn't give Brad Underwood and give it to Gundy. Too soon?
Give it to
Gundy. All the money that Oklahoma State did not give to Brad Underwood.
Basketball.
And give it to
threw me
Gundy.
off there.
Sorry,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I didn't mean
to
throw you off.
And Arizona State apparently is interested in Herm Edwards.
You play to win the game.
I guess.
That's so bad.
I guess. Mississippi State reportedly looking at Pruitt. Very close.
Because we're just going to hire Alabama's defensive coordinator from now until the end of time.
Apparently
what's going to happen.
Apparently so. Dan Mullen let about half the staff go at Florida. He did retain Chris Rumpf, former Gamecock, one of their top recruiters, at least for now. He retained 4 members off of the former Florida staff. at this particular point in time. 2 of his staff members from Mississippi State are joining that staff as well right now. A couple of other quick notes. The ACC Coach of the Year is Mark Richt. The ACC Rookie of the Year is Boston College running back A.J. Dillon. Aja Wilson of USC is the SEC Women's Player of the Week. Devin Sibley of Furman is the Southern Conference Men's Player of the Week. And Bud Moore passed away at the age of 92, NASCAR Hall of Fame car owner and crew chief from Spartanburg, who not only was famous for his work in NASCAR, he was equally famous as a war hero back in World War II. A lot has been written about his time at the age of 18 as a machine gunner. He was part of the invasion on D-Day and the stories he used to tell about that. Mm-hmm. And got a chance to meet him once or twice over the years in NASCAR. And he was NASCAR when NASCAR was just country. Mm. That is what Bud Moore and that group up there, David Pearson, the Pearson family, and then down in the PD, Cale Yarborough. I mean, that's how, they were just good old country folks who went racing every weekend. And that's what Bud Moore was, and did a great thing in racing and in his career. He was the oldest living member of the NASCAR Hall of Fame before he passed away at the age of 92. All right, to the phones we go, 800-956-7266. Alex in Myrtle Beach, welcome into Sports Talk. How are you? I'm sorry.
Wonderful. Thank you. I wasn't planning on talking any NASCAR. We brought it up, and I have to say one of my earliest memories as a kid is watching NASCAR. I don't watch too much of it anymore, but you mentioned Cale Yarborough. I remember Cale Yarborough, he spun out in the infield. He got in a wreck with someone, and he jumped out of his car, and someone else, I don't remember, in the infield, and they got in a fist fight right there. And that was NASCAR, as I remember it.
That was Daytona. He was fighting one of the Allison brothers. I think it was Bobby.
Oh, is that right? Yeah. Oh, yeah, it was a good fight there, and they were really going at it. But I thought, if I may quick about this college football playoff thing, I'll make a prediction. I do think that if Ohio State wins or if TCU wins, I think Alabama is definitely in. And, the ACC they're in, the SEC champions are in. And Alabama, I'm not an Alabama fan. Actually, I'm a University of South Carolina grad, but I think they deserve to be in just because, everybody, I saw this thing on ESPN on the ESPN television. Their ranking was like their strength schedule was 60. But I think if people forget, they've got a target. They've had a target on their back for the past 3 or 4 years. Everybody's going at you. They've got one loss. And I'm just saying, I think their chances of getting in are 75%. I think probably Ohio State probably will win. TCU may or may not win. And I think that, and I know that, everybody's saying, Alabama's saying I think sometimes respect, it does have a place in this sports. And this is getting a segue to my next topic about this whole, if I may quickly, about this kneeling in the NFL. Listen, I work 2 jobs and stick to pride right now. When you go to work, you don't bring up, cliche religion or politics. And these NFL players forget what they're doing bring up right there in front of all the fans and, the cameras. They're bringing their politics first to your teammates, right? And, they may have a different political opinion. Not only to do that, but they're bringing it up to now let's be honest, half the viewership, the NFL is probably Trump voters. I'm not saying I did vote for him. Okay. I'm not saying I didn't. I'm not saying one way or another. And now you're split up. I think they're I actually was listening to Bobby's show earlier, and actually called Bobby Harden's show here in Charleston earlier. Voiced my opinion about this.
Hey, listen, we gotta jump in because we got a break coming up. But thank you very much for your phone call. Hey, we got the new poll coming out tonight.
Yes.
So we'll find out. As far as your last part there, listen, I think Will and I both agree that not in favor of what the NFL players have done and are continuing to do sporadically. And to me, it's very basic. You are in the workplace, but I have to blame the owners for not stepping up and saying, hey, you're not doing this when you're in our uniform and on the job. I think that's what our bosses would say to us here and in other places. Talking Tuesday here on Sports Talk. Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic. 800-956-7266 is the phone number. Email talkback at sportstalksc.com. On Twitter, we are at SportsTalkSC. If you haven't signed up to be with us on Twitter, do so. The family continues to grow on Twitter. Just a little bit, we'll hear from Dabo Swinney and his press conference earlier today. Want to remind you, it's coming up quickly. We have the Touchstone Energy North-South football game in Myrtle Beach, December 9th. Tickets are available online at touchstoneenergybowl.com. Also, you can win a couple of tickets. You've got until December 1st to register for 2 tickets, plus a $100 Visa gift card and free Touchstone Energy merchandise. Go to the website, scliving.coop/touchdown to register. December 1st is the deadline to enter. All right, back to the phones we go. Then we'll hear from Dabo Swinney here coming up.
I wanted to talk about what the last caller talked about with regards to the NFL, just to respond real quick, because I know we didn't have to because we were up against the break.
Mm-hmm.
The anthem stuff, well, it bothers me. It probably doesn't bother me as much as it used to, but the thing that bothers me about the NFL is that the games literally have been so lousy, they're unwatchable. The level of play this year has been completely terrible.
Mm-hmm.
The only game that was interesting last week was the game that involved your favorite team, the Packers and the Steelers. That actually was probably the best NFL game we'd seen in a long time. Other than that, the games so far have stunk. So that's the thing that bothers me more about the anthem stuff in the NFL.
Enjoyed Clowney last night, watching him and the way the Texans are moving him all over the place, and just what a superior athlete that guy is. Also enjoyed the fact that the points total stopped at 39.
Oh,
that was quite interesting to some of us.
Did you?
Quite interesting. For 39 was very, very good number for that game to end on last night.
Is that a fact?
Yes. Back to the phones we go. JC in Columbia. Welcome in, sir. How are you?
Hey, guys, I got 2 comments. I'll let you go, so I know you're busy. I'm proud of my Tigers, win or lose. Been a Tiger fan all my life. Everybody in my house, Carolina fans, I love them too. It's just a game, guys. But let me tell you what bothers me the most about drinking at games. These cats leave out of there behind the wheel drinking. Hit somebody head on, take out an innocent family.
Mm-hmm.
We need to crack down on that. I'm telling you, my son was killed driving with a guy that was drunk. I have no place for people to drink and drive. Think of how many of them that leave out of that game. They're half lit. And they're driving. You got state troopers directing them out. They're drunk. They're literally getting in the car and they're driving out of there.
I've often thought about that, JC. I mean, think about it.
Think about that.
We all kind of laugh and giggle about tailgates, especially long tailgates that go on for hours and hours. And yeah, the alcohol consumption is off the charts. And I've often wondered, what kind of shape are some of these people in when they leave, not just a football game, but any sporting event, a race, a baseball game, anything where you go hours in advance of the event and hang out and just drink and eat. And then you go to the events and you can maybe buy liquor inside in certain arenas. And then you get behind the wheel. I've often thought about that. That's why being in the media and being about 3 hours behind everybody else is pretty safe.
Mm. I've always been thankful about the fact that while our job takes a very, very long time, not only do we get out of there without traffic, but usually, like you said, a lot of the loonies who were on the road are not on the road with us.
And they got their families in the car. They took the game with them, their kids, and they're drunk.
Yeah. It's,
so
what can you do? Because it's allowed in the parking lots. The drinking is allowed in the parking lots. And you can't carry it, publicly into the stadium. But we all know people are hiding it and taking it in there.
Yep.
So I don't know what you can do.
All
right, so
it's not a good thing.
Thank you, man. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I would say this. I don't go to very many games as a fan anymore. Just nature of the business. We go to so many games as media members. You kind of try to get away from a little bit of that. But whenever I do go to a game as a fan, if I'm not tailgating, usually I just Uber it, honestly.
Yeah.
So in that vein, if I know if there's going to be drinking going on, I just Uber it.
My Uber experiences have not been good.
No, because you don't know how to use the damn thing.
Well, I mean, listen, if it's too complicated to use.
I need to give you a tutorial on how to use it. Plus, you were using Uber in New York, which was the worst place in the world to use Uber.
Not a smart move.
Use your right hand.
Let's go to John in Ruby for our next phone call. Hello, John. Welcome in.
Good to talk with you again.
Yes, sir.
On this notable things, Am I correct, or when Dabo hired him, was he not being basically forced out of Oklahoma for the other Stoops brother?
Pretty much so. I mean, they didn't publicly push him out, but I think he saw the handwriting on the wall there with the brother coming in and the brother being the head coach, even though he'll tell you he felt like he was part of the Stoops family.
There was some bad blood there.
They made room for the brother and sort of elbowed him to the side there. And so, yeah, it turned out well for all sides. I mean, Clemson has benefited, he's benefited, and Oklahoma's been fine.
Yeah. Okay, well, I was just wondering about it. I mean, yeah, that's been a few years back and everything, and no memory ain't what it used to be there and everything. Now, about this NFL thing, all the time that y'all were carrying on about this thing, I never called in, but I got my own concept of it, and I want you to know I do not affiliate with no political affiliation whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
It would seem like to me this thing should be pretty well cut and dried to the point to where it could ever be proven that you were only on any type of government assistance, then that null and voids your right to protest your government. You understand? Am I wrong for thinking? Am I crazy for thinking that?
Well, I mean, look, the simplest explanation, as I understand it, is this: if you're in a setting that, like in a job setting, and it's not, and it's you're working for a public entity, you know, like a team or like a radio network or a grocery store, you do not have complete freedom of speech. You can't go in there to your boss and say whatever you want to say or do whatever you want to do and think you're protected behind that. But if you do work in a government setting, you know, if you work at the White House or you work in one of the agencies or whatever, then you do have that freedom. The government can't stop you from saying and doing things. But in the public sector, your boss, the people who write your paycheck, they can. And that's my understanding. I would never try to test it in either place personally, but that's my understanding.
I knew what but I mean, it just seems like.
Will, you're a lot smarter than me. Am I right?
No. If I am, you're in the world of trouble, Frank.
No, I was actually asking Will. I was actually addressing Will and saying, I know you're a lot smarter than we are, John, but I'm addressing Will over here to see if he's a lot smarter.
No. Like I said, if I'm smarter, you're all both in the world of trouble. But thanks for taking my call, and good hearing from y'all. And
you too.
Everything's still beautiful up here in Ruby, centrally located between New York and Miami on Highway number 9 in beautiful South Carolina.
Very nice, John.
Thank you, man.
What you're saying is not wrong, but what I am saying is that you and I are living in a bit of a different time than maybe we were living in a couple of years ago. Like things have become so politically charged and so volatile that it almost, to some people, would sound offensive for us to say what we're saying. And that, to me, just stands to reason of the times that we currently sit in.
Well, I'm afraid that some people believe there are no limits to anything that they do or say. And if you try to put any kind of limit or restraint on them, then they believe that you're violating their constitutional rights. So I think people are wrong with some of the things that they do and say, and when they do it and when they say it. But that's just my opinion, based on my years of education and experience. That's how I happen to look at things. Not saying I'm right, not saying I'm wrong. That's my view of it. But I do believe that I'm right in saying that it's wrong for the NFL players to not stand for the national anthem. And I think it's wrong for the NFL owners not to stand up to the players and say, you will stand for the national anthem because that's what we want you to do. Now, if me as an NFL owner agrees with the player's position, I'm tired of them hiding behind this thing. Well, it's their right to protest. Okay. That is such a cop-out to me. Okay. People do not go into a stadium and pay $100 and something for tickets and $50 to park to be hit with a political statement before the game begins. I believe if you poll the people in the stadium, the vast majority would agree with that. Be right back.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
Hard to get the 50. That's why I didn't go to Syracuse.
That why?
Well, that and it was cold.
Welcome back into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. 800-956-7266 is our phone number. David Shelton will be here. Bottom of the next hour, we'll preview the 2A championship game. This should be really good. Abbeville, where it's all about the A, and Bamberg-Ehrhardt, two proud programs. Bamberg-Ehrhardt this year, Coach Kevin Crosby, they allowed for an entire season, on average, 5 points per game.
Ouch. 6
shutouts on the season. That is some defense. Abbeville averages 38 points per game, so that'll be a nice matchup there between that O and that D. 800-956-7266. Had a couple of lines open up during the break if you want to join in. Continue to talk about Clemson's win over USC. Look ahead to Clemson and Miami. Look ahead to USC's future. I know. In the eyes of Gamecock fans who are taking a pounding on social media, the loss to Clemson dampens everything. But you shouldn't let it do that. You really shouldn't. I think that Muschamp has obviously got this thing moving in a positive direction. Do they need some help in various areas? Absolutely. Does he need to do something with the offense? No question about it. Whether it's with the current offensive coordinator or somebody else, he better figure out a way to get this offense up to 400-plus yards per game and 30-plus points per game. It cannot continue to piddle around with an offense that's ranked 110th in the country and averages about 20 points per game. Yeah. You can't lean on your defense game in and game out and expect to get to where you want to get to.
I think that people kept trying to look at the injuries as something that is something to kind of like fall back on as an excuse. This offense wasn't one or two or three different players away from any type of astronomical change in success. This was a philosophical disconnect between what was coached and what the output was on the field. There's some sort of breakdown there, whether it's a change in personnel or a change in the coach. It's much easier to change the coach and then get somebody who can acclimate to the personnel. I don't think that Kurt Roper ever did acclimate to the quarterback that he has, the personnel he has, or quite honestly, I don't think the players adapted to what he was coaching and what he wanted on the field.
Let's don't be talking about Kurt Roper like it's in past tense. He's still the offensive coordinator.
I'm just saying in this past year, that the past year is basically past tense, save for a bowl game.
Mm-hmm. Though if you read some of the insider stuff on the Gamecock fan websites, one in particular leads you to believe that Roper is definitely gone. It's like they're waiting for him and hoping he finds another job, like maybe that Rice job, or maybe he's good friends with Luke at Ole Miss. Maybe Luke will hire him, but it makes it sound like Muschamp has made up his mind to have a new offensive coordinator, and he's just hoping that somebody can spare him the ugliness of having to fire a guy that he's pretty close to. Personally. He brought him into Florida with him and brought him into South Carolina when he got that job.
As we say in the recruiting world, these things have a way of working themselves out.
Sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. Let's continue with the calls. Tom in Sumter, welcome into Sports Talk. How are you?
Yes, I make a comment real quick, and then I want to respond to what you said about the anthem. What I don't understand is on the Coach Roper thing, how come the head coach is never held responsible for this? It's like Muschamp is getting a total pass. He's the head coach. So if the offense is struggling, he's as much a part of the problem as anybody else.
Well, he hires the offensive coordinator, so of course he's accountable.
Yeah,
and he's not getting a pass. I mean, at least not here.
No.
If you depends on who you're listening to. But if an honest evaluation of the season and the team, this is what you say for Muschamp. He's done an excellent job of building this program in 2 years to get them really from rock bottom to 8 wins in 2 years is pretty impressive. But if he's not careful, his offense is going to hold him back from where they could get to, and he needs to address it.
That was the problem he
needs to address it.
It was the problem he had at Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, anyway, if I could respond to your anthem thing, I totally agree, but then I kind of disagree. I don't understand why the owners can't be thought to force their employees to do what, they think is part of the job, and that is to create a certain climate and atmosphere, by standing to the anthem. But the one thing you said, though, you don't pay money to go see a political statement. But the other side of that is, in many places, there's another type of political statement. I think the national anthem, some would say by itself, and I'm not against it, but that is a political statement. But I do think the owner's difficulty is, football is all about free agency now, building a team. And I think an owner doesn't want to become labeled as one who's not insensitive to the attitudes of the players, because if you get labeled as an owner like the McNair and Houston right now, I got a feeling that's one of the things that's going to work against Houston in the future, as the players might perceive him as an owner that is insensitive to the players. And I think that's the owner's difficulty right now. They want to do it, but I think a lot of them are concerned about how it will affect their long-term ability to bring in the free agents that in the modern era of football you have to have.
Well, I don't disagree with that. I think the checkbook will answer a lot of that for them. As far as the national anthem being a political statement, I mean, my goodness. So when I stand for the national anthem and put my hand over my heart, I'm making a political statement? No, I'm sorry. I mean, I think every American should stand for the national anthem just out of respect for what you've got in this country. I'm not going to get here and get off on a bunch of politics, but to me, that's not a political statement. That's just what you're supposed to do. There, in my mind, there are certain things in the country that you're supposed to do out of respect for the country itself, the military, whatever you want, however you want to look at it. You just do it and you don't question it. It's just part of being an American. And of course, I know a part of it of being an American is that you have the right not to do things too.
Again,
I think as a sports fan, the last thing I want to see when I go into an arena is something related to the political world, because you get plenty of that on the outside. I've never thought of standing for the national anthem as a political statement. I've always just thought of it as the right thing to do.
I just think that you and I have made our statements basically.
I have no problem standing and saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I mean, is that a political statement? It's indoctrinated in you if you grow up in this country. I think
we just move on.
No, I want to talk more about it. I'm running for office next year.
Is that a fact?
Let's continue. We go platform. To is it Clark in Greenwood? Hey, Clark, welcome into Sports Talk. You got about 45 seconds.
Hey, I just want to call. I wasn't far off my score. I said 38-10 this past weekend, and Clemson's averaging 35 points a game. And, I just tell you, the way I see Clemson, I mean, they're at every game now. The bright lights, it's just another game for them. I mean, they handle it so well. They've been on the main stage so many times, and I really think they're going to beat Miami. About as bad as they want to.
I have no doubt they'll beat Miami.
No, I think
going back and watching the game on television, Will.
The Pitt game?
No, the South Carolina Clemson game, and listening to the announcers, Joe Tessitore
and Blackledge.
Yeah, and is that Holly
Rowe?
Anyway, it was almost like they felt sorry for South Carolina.
Didn't you? After a while?
Well, no. But listening to them, it was like anytime if South Carolina could manufacture a first down or something in the second half, they looked at that like a minor victory for South Carolina.
They were not head and shoulders better than South Carolina. They were head, shoulders, torso, breast, everything ahead of South Carolina. And I think that they are basically head and shoulders ahead of anybody who they will see until the playoff.
Yeah, but only going to see Miami.
Which includes Miami.
Yeah. All right, coming up on the top of the hour, so we'll keep you up to date on the new college football playoff poll. That'll be coming out in spurts a little bit after 7 o'clock. We'll hear from Dabo Swinney in the next hour as well. And we've got recruiting coming up for you as well. Should you lose us over the airwaves for whatever reason, go to our website, follow us there on YouTube video stream. We'll be back. meetings and they're tagging attendance. Yes, sir. Okay. Coming down in 3, 2, 1. Dutch Fork athlete Bryce Thompson is still dealing with schools and trying to decide if he will. Coming down in 3, 2, 1. Dutch Fork athlete Bryce Thompson is still working with a handful of schools, still trying to decide if he will sign in December. Thompson said he's dealing with USC, Virginia Tech, NC State, and Marshall at this point. USC coach Will Muschamp and a couple of assistants on Monday visited with Spring Valley linebacker Channing Tindall. He took an official to Auburn over the weekend. He also plans officials to USC and Georgia. Running back Jashawn Corbin of Melbourne, Florida, went to Oregon last weekend, and he plans to take an official to Clemson December 13th. He's also looking at Florida State and Southern Cal for official visits. I'll throw this in at the end here. And linebacker Peyton Wilson of Hillsborough, North Carolina, a former North Carolina commitment, has been contacted by Clemson recruiter Robbie Caldwell. Phil Kornbluth, South Carolina Radio Network Sports.
2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
Oh, State, no. All right, here you go at number 25, Fresno State. 24, NC State. 23, Mississippi State. No coach. 22, Virginia Tech, and 21, Northwestern.
Why does NC State continue to get all this damn love? I don't get it.
8-4. Hey, South Carolina was 8-4 and beat NC State. They took the Gamecocks' place.
That's kind of what I'm
Ungrateful committee. Dan Radakovich, Bobby Johnson, couple of Tigers conspiring
I smell something
against the Gamecocks.
I smell something nefarious.
All right, there you go. That's the first 5 to be posted as we wait for the information to drip out. We'll do recruiting coming up in a little bit, and we'll tell you where Kurt Roper was just a little while ago. Stay tuned for that. Yes, he is on the road recruiting for the Gamecocks, doing his job, despite what others are suggesting. He's out there working. Have not heard anything more today about him and Rice. You would think if Rice wanted to meet with him, they could get that done pretty quickly. Hasn't happened yet as far as we know. All right, number 20 is Memphis. Boy, I love that coach at Memphis. Norvell?
Yes.
Boy, and that quarterback? Whew.
They got a lot.
That offense is. Oklahoma State's 19. Washington State's 18. LSU is 17. Michigan State is 16.
Michigan State's like the quietest 16 ever. Mark Denton just continues to be consistent. 8-9 wins.
Former Gamecock. You know that?
I did know that.
You looked a little surprised when I said that.
I don't get surprised.
Yeah. 800-956-7266 is the phone number. Just waiting on the next group of rankings to come out. Then we'll let you hear a little bit from Dabo Sweeney here on Sports Talk tonight. A lot of Dabo and some Brent Venables to come your way as the Tigers had their press conference today previewing Miami. Notre Dame is 15. Central Florida 14, Washington 13, Stanford 12, and there's TCU at number 11. All right, let's go to Dabo.
Having a lot of respect for the Miami group as he has for all of his opponents, but one thing he really likes is that defense, which he says looks awful familiar.
It's a great matchup. Defensively, they are really, 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 really good. I mean, it's they look like Clemson. It looks like our practice tape when I watch this defense. I mean, they got some cats up front now. These guys, there's a bunch of pros. They got a lot of them. They are really athletic, big, heavy-handed, well-coached defensive front, and then backers can fly, big physical guys that can run and speed on the back end. So they're a complete defense. It's going to be a challenge at all 3 levels. They lead the nation in turnover margin. They lead the nation in sacks. They're second in the nation in tackles for loss. And I think we're kind of right there behind them or right there with them in just about every category defensively. So you got 2 great defenses going against each other. And then on the flip side, offensively, they can run. They're very balanced. First of all, incredibly balanced. This is as balanced a football team as we've played all year, and that presents problems when you have a team that can play with balance. It challenges you, and so they've not been one-dimensional at all. They're a team that hangs their hat on being able to run the football and play action in the boots that come off of that. So, that's the challenge. They've got, I think, 4 out of 5 offensive linemen back that started for them last year. A lot of experience in the offensive line. I love this running back. It's little number 24 now. He's a baller. He is a really good player. A huge loss for him with the tight end. It's really unfortunate. You just hate that for the young man. He is a great player. 23. Obviously, he got hurt. But they got bunch of dudes outside. They got some guys that can run. They got size. So it's a great matchup. I'm very impressed with this quarterback. He's made a lot of plays with his legs. He's very athletic. I think Mark's done a fantastic job in giving them a chance to win week in and week out with a great plan. And they've stuck to the plan. You know, they've found ways every single week to move the football, and especially in critical situations, in games where they've had to have drives, they have made big plays. Just a lot of guys to choose from, and again, what you'd expect to see when you're in a championship game. I mean, it's just the way it's supposed to be. So you know it's going to be a game of a few plays. You know, probably going to come down to that turnover margin and big plays. That's usually what decides championship games, and you know, we all understand that. And then special teams, you know, Barrios, and not to mention Barrios is the leading receiver, but he's also a great returner. So I mean, he's a guy that's going to present some challenges for us that we've got to have a plan for. He's made plays on everybody, so he's a really good football player that is a senior veteran, smart, savvy guy that you know, is a matchup issue. So a lot to prepare for getting ready for this group.
Okay, Dabo Swinney, part one, coming out of his presser today. All right, Southern Cal is number 10. Penn State is number 9. As they are just dragging this thing out for whatever reason, I don't know.
I told you what it is. They want to win both quarter hours. They want to win the first quarter hour between 7 and 7:15, and they want to win.
All right, Mr. Quarter Hour. Ohio State is number 8.
It's a TV ratings thing. It's the same thing that happens with the NCAA tournament selection show.
Ohio State is number 8. So, you know, if Ohio's – it's funny. You know, you got Nick Saban last year stating on the record that you shouldn't be in the playoff if you don't win your championship. Or play for your – you say win or play for your championship.
I don't remember which one he said.
Yeah. Well, anyway, because he was talking about Ohio State.
Yes.
Who got in without playing for the Big Ten championship. Well, now, you know, here's Alabama, shoes on the other foot.
Yes.
And he's saying, well, you know, we should be in the playoff. We deserve to be in there based on our body of work and our entire season and all this kind of stuff.
Was that lost to Oklahoma? It's like 30 points, wasn't it? It was a blowout, wasn't it?
Who's that?
Ohio State's. How bad was that lost to Oklahoma?
You mean early in the year?
Yes.
Very beginning. Yeah.
Very,
but I'm talking about Alabama. I'm talking about Nick Saban making the point that Alabama should be in,
right?
Contradicting the premise that he laid out for Ohio State.
Of course.
All right, Miami's in at number 7. Miami's in at number 7.
Interesting.
At 10-1.
That's a big drop.
So it will be Wisconsin will probably be number 6, I guess. Or Auburn. No, Auburn will be –
Auburn will be the top 4 after beating Alabama, I would think.
Yeah, they'll replace Miami. They'll replace Alabama and Miami. You got 2 spots. So I guess it stands to reason that Wisconsin and Auburn are going to be in the top 4 here. Wouldn't you think?
We'll see.
At this particular point?
This committee has been so inconsistent, Corn. I'm done trying to predict what the heck they're going to say. I really am.
Well, of course, there's Georgia in there. So here's what I think is going to happen. I think when the 4 are announced, I think it will be Clemson, Oklahoma, Auburn, Wisconsin. I think you'll have Georgia 5 and Alabama 6.
I will say Clemson, Auburn, Oklahoma.
You think Auburn goes all the way to number 2?
Yes. Auburn number 2, Oklahoma number 3, Alabama number 4.
No, Alabama will not be in the top 4.
You don't think?
They have to show that a loss, and a fairly decisive loss at that, is held against you, even if you're Alabama. It's held against everybody else. Look how far Miami dropped.
I'm not saying you're wrong.
Miami lost to Pitt, but they did lose on the road. Alabama lost to Auburn.
I'm just showing you how completely inconsistent this committee can be. I'm trying to think of the most ridiculous thing in the world that could possibly happen.
Georgia Tech's up on Northwestern in their challenge game 7-2.
Can you tell I have no faith in this group of 13 people that they put in there? Can you tell I have no faith in them?
I can tell that. We should get that 4 for you after this quarter-hour break,
because that's what happens
for Nielsen ratings on ESPN.
Television
and our timeout as well.
It's a television thing.
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
All right, so here you go. Clemson, number 1. Auburn, number 2. I love the Auburn play-by-play announcer.
Rod Bramlett.
Yeah, he picked right up following his predecessor. Who was the guy there before him?
Oh, no, I'm not sure.
Who was legendary there for Auburn people. But Auburn, his touchdown call and his predecessor, very similar. Touchdown Auburn, but just the way they say it, fantastic. Real pros. Oklahoma is 3. Wisconsin is 4. Alabama is 5. Georgia is 6. So, you know what? Now you give the committee some kudos because what they have set up, of course, play-in situations for this weekend. With Clemson playing Miami, and Miami was 7th, right?
Yes.
Auburn playing Georgia. Georgia is 6th.
6 versus a 2.
Oklahoma plays TCU. TCU's a little bit further down the list.
Like 9, I think.
And then Wisconsin.
Or 11, I think. 11.
Wisconsin plays Ohio State. So, I mean, in other words, you've got an opportunity for real chaos this weekend if there are upsets. And then you've got Alabama sitting there waiting in the wings. That's going to be the big question. Let's just play devil's advocate here and say that there is multiple upsets of the top 4.
All right.
Alabama benefits. They move up.
Oh, no.
They would move up by not playing.
Any of those top 4 lose, Alabama's in.
Well, not any. Let's just say, for example, Georgia beat Auburn. Georgia would replace Auburn. You could not. Right. Let's just say that's the only one.
Okay.
You could not put Alabama in and not Georgia. You could not put Alabama in and not Georgia. You could not put Alabama in. You're not hearing me.
They did it last year. What I'm saying, they did it last year with Ohio State. They put Ohio State in without putting the Big Ten champion in.
Yeah.
So I'm just.
But this is a one-loss.
Don't tell me they can't do something that they've done already.
This is a one-loss Georgia team.
I understand that. It's a one-loss Alabama team.
I just couldn't see that happening.
I'm not saying you're wrong. Yeah. I'm saying it's just as illogical coming out of your mouth as it is. But I'm also saying that I don't trust this group of Baker's dozen fools that sit in that room in Grapevine, Texas. I'm sorry. I'm being very transparent. I don't trust the committee. I don't trust Dan Rad. I don't trust the other guy who's connected to Clemson, Bobby Johnson. Yeah, I don't trust those fools. I don't even trust a friend of mine. The guy who used to. No, the guy who used to.
Very close to him.
The guy who used to be the USA Today writer. What's the guy's name? He's on the committee now.
I couldn't tell you.
Oh,
name dropper.
Come on.
Yes, when you drop somebody's name, you should actually know the guy.
Yeah, I just
know
can't.
The name.
I just can't think of his name off the top of my head.
Walter Cronkite?
No.
Dan Rather? I couldn't tell you who you're thinking of.
Oy.
Anyway,
he's the only guy who's not a former coach or player. He's he's on the college football committee as a journalist. Is what he is.
Clemson, Auburn, Oklahoma, Wisconsin. I think everybody is happy that Wisconsin's in the 4 and being rewarded for an undefeated regular season through the Big Ten. Now they got to go prove it against Ohio State in the championship game. That's what it's all about.
Steve Weberg.
Okay, good friend. Yeah, I'm good friends with Steve too.
He's a Missouri guy.
He's good friends.
Yes,
good friend. We have lunch every other week. It's Weiberg, isn't it? Isn't it pronounced Weiberg?
He says Weberg.
That's pronounced Weiberg.
He says I've talked to him personally.
Spelled Weiberg.
It is spelled Weiberg, but he says Weberg.
All right, let's go to Mr. Venables.
He had some interesting comments regarding his status as the defensive coordinator of the Clemson Tigers. Of course, his name has been talked about in connection with jobs at Arkansas and Mississippi State, but he says his focus remains on this week's ACC championship game.
I mean, my focus is completely, on this game and this week and the great job that I do have and the great players that I get to coach every day. So, my focus is right here.
Is it more flattering or annoying when you hear your name kind of batted about amongst that coaching search tree situation?
Well, because you all bring it up, it's annoying. I don't hear about it, otherwise, whatever's out there, because I just don't spend any time focused on that. And, I got a great job. And again, I've said that many, many times, and I'm very thankful and grateful for that. And, we're in a great position. So why would I, be worried about what's on the other side of the fence? And I've always felt that way. And if people have interest, that's part of it. You either decide to listen or not. And right now, we've got a tremendous opportunity this week playing for a championship. And my loyalty is to here and our players.
Like I said, you got to take the man at his word until he proves you otherwise.
All right. There you go. We'll hear more from Dabo Swinney coming up in a little bit. How about some recruiting for you now here on Sports Talk? Dutch Fork getting ready for a state championship game Saturday. Tom Knotts, the very successful coach there, said at the press conference yesterday that his athlete, Bryce Thompson, is the best player he's coached in 37 years. As for Thompson, receiver, defensive back, he said that he's still up in the air over things. He's not sure yet if he'll be able to graduate early, which is what he would like to do. He's dealing with USC, Virginia Tech, NC State, and Marshall. And talk about him going to junior college. He said that's not his priority at this point. He says he's trying not to go to junior college, but he said you never know what happens. He said the goal is to go straight to a 4-year school. He's been in touch with USC defensive coordinator Travaris Robinson. He was at the USC Clemson game. He said Robinson likes him as a DB, but receivers coach Brian McClendon likes him as a receiver. In July, Thompson said he had made his decision and was planning to commit, but he had to delay that because he needed more academic work to be completed. He said his mind basically remains made up. He said it's still the same, but you never know. It's a long time until signing day. A lot can change. His goal is to sign in December, but that remains to be seen. USC commit quarterback to Kerryon Joyner had an in-home visit with USC offensive coordinator and quarterback coach Kurt Roper today.
Interesting.
So Roper is out doing his thing.
Means he's still employed, which is nice.
Yeah.
For him.
Well, I mean, nobody has, outside of the rumor mill and the fans, nobody has fired him. Nobody that matters.
Rumor mill has fired you and me a couple times.
Shit. Yesterday, Will Muschamp and 2 assistants met with Spring Valley linebacker Channing Tindall for an in-home. Tindall took an official to Auburn over the weekend. He also plans officials to USC and Georgia. Florida has also been on his short list. And with Florida retaining Chris Rumpf, who has been recruiting him for Florida, we'll see if anything more develops there with the new head coach. Running back Jashawn Corbin of Melbourne, Florida, took an official visit to Oregon over the weekend. He plans to take officials to Clemson December 13th, Florida State, and Southern Cal. He's been committed to Florida State. Linebacker Peyton Wilson of Hillsborough, North Carolina, who decommitted from North Carolina last week, said Clemson recruiter Robbie Caldwell has been in touch with him. Clemson was on his short list along with Tennessee and Ohio State when he committed to the Tar Heels in May. I think Notre Dame might be a player with him now as well. Louisville coach Bobby Petrino and a couple of assistants made an in-home visit last night with their commitment, defensive end Jarrett Jackson of Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. He has taken an official visit to USC and has visits scheduled for the next 2 weekends to Pitt and Louisville. And I believe we have covered all the major recruiting news that we have for you so far today.
That's it?
Well, isn't that enough?
Never.
I mean, you got to have
it's never
filet mignon every night. Occasionally, you got to have some chopped steak.
It's never.
All right, here's another note.
Okay.
2 Clemson commits, quarterback Trevor Lawrence and receiver Darion Kendrick are finalists for the U.S. Army Player of the Year Award. Oh, defensive back Israel Mukuamu of Bossier City, Louisiana, said he's expecting a visit from Florida State this week and one from USC recruiter Travaris Robinson on Monday. Of course, he remains committed to Florida State, but if there's a coaching change there, I think he might really flip over to South Carolina.
Told you had more in you.
That is it.
You didn't believe me.
For now. Check it out on our website, SportsTalkSC.com, and on Twitter, use the hashtag STRecruiting. David Shelton coming up.
These guys, check them out on the web at SportsTalkSC.com. Now, more of Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
And time for tonight's high school football report, a preview of the 2A state championship game between Abbeville and Bamberg Earhart, brought to you by Farm Bureau Insurance. With new auto insurance rates from Farm Bureau Insurance, you could be saving a whole lot of money. Even if you received a quote before, rates are now more competitive than ever, so go get a no-obligation quote today at favrates.com. We welcome in our fave, David Shelton of the High School Sports Report and the Charleston Post and Courier. Though I must say, David, it was fun being with Billy Baker on Monday and listening to his rather unique way of asking questions.
Yeah, you could say, I mean, if that's your idea of fun, yeah, I mean, that's you know, I worked with the guy for close to 30 years, so I've heard all the questions phrased, and, you know, I mean, we had our fun with it, that's for sure. I almost nailed him on the first question.
You did.
Didn't I?
You certainly did. Almost lost it. All right. This matchup, Abbeville and Bamberg Earhart, two longtime powers, great traditions, and Abbeville 38 points per game. But this defense by Bamberg Earhart at 5 points per game. So classic matchup of a great offense and a great defense. Which way do you think it's going to go?
Well, it's going to be a really interesting game. I think this will be the lowest scoring game of the weekend. I think if you're a football fan that digs really good defense, go see this, because as good as Abbeville is offensively, they're also really good on defense. But you're looking at a Bamberg Earhart defense that's given up 10 points in 3 playoff games. 1 touchdown, and that touchdown was by that offensive juggernaut from Latta.
Hey, hey!
So you know that
grudge match for coin this weekend, by the way.
That tells you that's a pretty good defense. They've been really good in the playoffs. Very athletic and fast. Abbeville with that bone, flex bone, wishbone, however they want to call it, offense, where they essentially are going to run the football. You know, that plays into that for Bamberg's defense, but you know, Bamberg's got to score enough points to beat Abbeville. So I mean, this is a game that 14 could win it. 20 or 21 will definitely win it. But I mean, it wouldn't shock me if we didn't walk out of there Friday night and it was 7-0 somebody. It's going to be a low scoring defensive struggle.
I don't mean to pile on the schedule maker, but 5.4 points a game, that just sounds like such an absurd number. I'm wondering if they're playing guys up to their level of play, or if they're just that darn good. Is it a mix of that, or are they just that darn good?
Well, I mean, I think at that level, you're going to have some teams that are not very good. I mean, that you can't do anything about it. But right. they played some good teams. I mean, if you look at, they played Barnwell twice. Barnwell right. was a top 5 team all season. They beat them twice. They played Carver's Bay in the playoffs on the road and shut them out. And Carver's Bay had 1 loss all season. So, you know, Batesburg-Leesville was in their conference. That's a pretty good team that had a decent little run in the postseason. So, you know, but, I mean, the loss they had is the one that really gets you. They lost to Scotts Branch about the 4th game of the year, 4th or 5th game of the year.
4th game, yes.
That was just the day they didn't show up because and they didn't score enough points, and they only lost. I mean, they didn't give up very many points. They just didn't score. But they haven't lost since then, so I think they had their wake-up call.
You don't just go into Scotts Branch and expect a rout, though. You throw out the records.
Absolutely.
Or Jerry's Branch, for that matter.
Either way.
Now, conversely, Abbeville has had a couple of scares in the playoffs. Sherall, they beat by a touch, and Saluda, they beat by 5. I mean, you credit Sherall and Saluda. Was that Abbeville being really pushed and just rising above, or did they not play their best in those 2 games?
Well, I think those 2 teams were pretty darn good all year. I mean, we talked about them every Friday night that, you know, Saluda was on a great run. They had some good skilled people. I thought that game would be very close, and it ended up being close. You know, their only loss was to Hartsville, who's in the 4A championship game. They lost that by a touchdown. So, yeah, but Abbeville's not going to be the type that, one, tries to blow people out. They just try to score enough points to win and put it on their defense. So, but they're capable of scoring a lot of points. But again, at the 1A and 2A level, there are going to be nights where you just are so much better than the other team. It's just not fun. And then there are going to be nights where you run into a team, a Sherrall team that was really good on defense and could throw it around a little bit. That's the type team that would give Abbeville a little bit of a problem. Bamberg's not going to be that type of offensive team. That's why I think you're just going to see it's going to be a knockdown, drag-out, slobber knocker to the end on defense kind of thing.
Panthers will boast two very good players who are all-star selections in the North-South game, Bryce Jackson and Monolito Rapley. How will these two impact the game when they play those Red Raiders of Bamberg Earhart?
Bryce is the key. He's the quarterback and kind of he's a really good athlete. I think he's a College of Charleston baseball signee. So really, really good athlete. And he's the key for them. And he's been banged up a little bit, but he got through it the other night. And I think at this point, really though, everybody's kind of banged up. I mean, you've been doing this since August, and guys are nicked, and you're in your last game. You're going to play your best guys if they're able to walk. And but Bryce got through it last week. Didn't have a tremendous game. I mean, but Abbeville doesn't throw the football, so the Abbeville quarterback just has to run the offense and run with the football, and he can do that. And J.R. Rapley's a good player, and Jermaine Blackwell, had a big game last week. So I think it's going to be a good game. I'm kind of looking forward to it because you see so many high school. I don't mind defensive games. I like when the defenses get after each other, and it's a good game that way.
Absolutely. All right, one last thing. We haven't touched on it yet, but boy, it's nice to have the Weekend of Champions back in this format on a Friday night, the 1A, 2As at Benedict, and then on Saturday, 3 games at Williams-Brice Stadium. It's just, I think, a terrific concept and something the high school league can really build upon and get back to making this weekend something special for high school football in the state.
I love it. I love it. I love the fact that they play 2 games on Friday night at Benedict. Benedict's a good enough stadium for those 2 games. It's plenty of parking and plenty of seating, and it's a turf field. And then you just, if you're a tremendous high school football fan, you just grab a little $90 hotel room, you spend the night, and you go watch 3 games at Williams-Brice on Saturday. I think it's a perfect setup. And I'm so glad the weather held off this year and we don't have games pushed back and all that. This has just turned out to be a really fun football season. It's going to culminate on this weekend. It's going to be some great games. All
right, David, thank you very much. I guess we have to ask you the winner. Did you give us a winner last night of 1A? Did we ask you that?
No, you didn't.
Okay.
And, I would lean Lamar. I would lean Lamar based on experience, and then I think I'm going to take Abbeville in the 2A game.
Well, you know what they say in Abbeville, right?
It's all about the A.
It's all about the A. All right, my man. Thank you. We'll talk to you tomorrow night about the 3As.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Abbeville. Yeah. Abbeville, this was, of course, you wouldn't know this, but Abbeville had a coach many years ago. Well, I forgot, you're the smartest guy in the room. You probably do know this.
Sure.
Dennis Botts.
Sure.
Was his name. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago.
Big fan of Dennis Botts.
But he had this voice, this deep,
grovelly.
Just football coaches, Southern football coaches' voice. And he did a couple of commercials, couple of television commercials. And, I mean, people loved it. People loved it. And not only that, I mean, he was a great football coach, won a lot of championships at Abbeville. And Abbeville's just one of those small towns in South Carolina that year in and year out, whether they've been 1A or 2A, produces a quality football team that seems to always be in position to play for the state championship.
You mentioned voices. You know whose voice, because I'd heard him talk, you know whose voice does not match his face of people who are who you and I come in contact with? Josh Kendall of the State, the man who covers the Gamecocks for the State, his voice on the phone does not match what you would think his face would look like.
I did hear that the Miami running back has joined the Clemson media corps.
What? Because his name is Homer?
His last name is Homer.
I'm kind of mad.
Why are you stealing my punchline?
I'm kind of mad.
You're supposed to follow along and say, "Oh, why is that, Corn?" Then I say, because
I thought it was a setup.
Turn off his mic.
I thought it was a setup.
Just killed my joke.
I thought it was a
setup.
Right back.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
Me?
All right, once again, if you're just tuning in, Clemson #1. So they're #1 in the meaningless polls and #1 in the one that counts. Auburn is 2, Oklahoma is 3, and Wisconsin is 4. On the outside with their nose pushed up against the glass, Alabama, Georgia, Miami, Ohio State, Penn State, and Southern Cal at number 10. Just a minute, a little bit more from Dabo Swinney, plus some Brad Brownell. I want to remind you, Sports Talk, brought to you by South Carolina Electric Cooperative, sponsors of the annual Touchstone Energy Cooperatives Bowl. And to find out more about what the co-ops are doing all across the state, visit ecsc.org. And remember, December 9th, 2017, Touchstone Energy Cooperatives Bowl.
A lot of the attention on this game between Clemson and Miami is centered around Miami's defense and the turnover chain and all that stuff. Clemson head coach Dabo Swinney would like to remind you they have a pretty darn good defense, which they've had their depth stretched out in over the course of this season, and no more so than last week when two big players in J.D. Davis and James Skalski stepped in for an injured Trey Lamar.
Yeah, I think that's another thing that we talked about back. If you go back to the preseason, one of the things I was excited about was I felt like we all felt like we were going to be really good on defense, but I felt like we were going to have the best competitive depth that we've had. Guys that functional football players. You always hear me say that. Guys that can go in and function and play well. Not guys that just go in there and they're talented, but they're a little dysfunctional. That's a different type of depth. We've had very functional depth, especially at linebacker, and it showed up for us all year. I mean, guys have played well, man. Trey Lamar's been out. I mean, J.D. Davis has led us in tackles at times. He's played great. Judah goes another night, gets a huge stop on 3rd and 2, hits him right smack in the backfield for a loss. Jalen Williams has played great for us this year. Skalski, just kind of waiting for his opportunity. And next thing you know, he's having to start some games and play a lot of snaps. I mean, he's won a player of the game around here. Chad Smith has come on for us. Shaq has improved a ton throughout this season. He's much more prepared to go play. So it's been a blessing, for sure. And it hasn't always been that way. We got a really, really good group of guys that we trust, that can go and, like I said, be functional players for us.
Times a few years ago where you would have been freaked out at the thought of a person in Skalski's role who hadn't played much going down to Columbia and looking like he belonged.
And that's just a reflection of our meetings and our practice. I mean, just the trust that we see from what practice reps, and it's how we practice. I mean, we rep a lot of guys in the spring. I rep a lot of guys in fall camp, and we rep a lot of guys throughout the course of the week. We really do. So especially as guys mature, sometimes it's just a matter of opportunity. I mean, you got guys like we know JD can go play. I mean, JD, he knows what he's doing. He's very smart. He runs well. He's big and strong. He's a good tackler. And, but Kendall Joseph is just kind of, he's been our starter. And so all of a sudden now Kendall's out for a game or two. Well, we got a guy that we trust, and we see it in practice every day. And we've changed up how we rotate those guys. Some of those guys will work with the 2s and they work with the 1s. And so it's developed a lot of confidence. And then just playing guys, something that we committed to early in the season. Because they deserve to play. And so we were really committed at a lot of positions to make sure that we played guys to develop the depth that we're going to need at the end to make it throughout the course of the season. And I'm glad that we stayed the course on that, because guys were ready to play. They stayed engaged, they stayed encouraged, they stayed focused, and all of a sudden now their time was up and they were ready to play.
Okay, Dabo Swinney from his press conference today. We'll hear more from the Tigers through the week. They'll have another presser in Charlotte on Friday. We'll have that covered for you here on Sports Talk. Clemson basketball team going to be back in action tomorrow night. Tigers going to play up at Ohio State. against the Buckeyes in the ACC Big Ten Challenge. Clemson is 5-1. Buckeyes are 5-2. Here's a little preview from the Tigers' standpoint from Coach Brad Brownell.
Team that's in some ways similar to ours. I think a lot of balanced scoring. Bates Diop is a lot like Dante, a big guy that can really shoot from the perimeter, that handles it well and has the ball in his hands a lot. Jayshawn Tate, I think, is a really powerful player and a guy who can drive it and score, rebounds the fire out of the ball, and is a guy that really makes a lot of big plays for those guys. Big guy inside Wesson, young freshman, very talented, unbelievable hands, 6'9", 270, great feet. I just think they're a very good team. Jackson at the point has played very well to start the season in scoring. I think that's been a nice surprise for them. And so Chris does a very good job. Defensively, they're very, very solid. They rebound the fire out of the ball, hard to score against. So you'll see a team that's going to have a good season this year and is off to a pretty good start. Obviously, I know they're disappointed the way the Butler game got away from them, but they played well in the 3 games over there in the PK 80, beating Stanford and losing in a competitive game with Gonzaga. So, we're excited to get back out and play, and it should be a very good challenge for us in a good environment.
Does this feel like a kind of a primer for the ACC?
A little bit. I mean, it's just, it's another game against good competition. Certainly, you don't have as many true road games in the non-conference anymore. We play a lot of neutrals and some home games. And so this is going to be one of those kind of games where you go into somebody's arena and, they'll have a good crowd and be ready to play. So it'll be a little bit like an ACC road game in a lot of ways, yeah.
You were able to beat Nebraska last year in the ACC Big Ten Challenge. How much do you think your players take pride in that?
Well, I don't know that they remember it a lot, to be honest with you. I think it was a good win for our team. It was a competitive game. It was a close game that we happened to win early that, I thought really helped build some momentum for our team. But at this point, every year is new, and this is a completely different kind of game that we're going to play. But certainly it's, again, it's a very competitive team that will challenge us physically because of their size and their physicality.
There are 2 losses, the one to Butler and then the one to Gonzaga. 2 different games totally for them, but was there any common thread in it? Or
not really. They really outplayed Butler, and just didn't handle the ball very well, in the last 5 minutes and obviously lost the lead. But this time of year that happens a little more because it's you just haven't done it as much. But I thought they played very well. They were Butler was really having a hard time scoring against them. Gonzaga is just so big physically.
Right.
They're just, they are just a big, strong physical team, and they had a guard that was really shooting the ball deep and making big shots to allow them to kind of pull away. But I think their size was a big factor in the game.
All right, Clemson basketball coach Brad Brownell, Tigers 5-1. That one loss coming to Temple in Charleston, 67-60. Ohio State 5-2. Starting lineup-wise, not a bad matchup for Clemson. Elijah Thomas, 6'9", Grantham, 6'8". Tallest starter, projected starter for Ohio State is Bates Diop at 6'7".
The thing I like about these ACC Big Ten matchups is they usually try to stack teams up against each other that are good matchups. They don't try to make it lopsided, which is a good thing. So I think you'll see a very competitive game. It'll be tough to win on the road, but it's good experience for this group.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I want to mention this. Speaking of basketball, Citadel coach Duggar Balcom has announced sophomore guard Preston Parks has been dismissed. Conduct detrimental to the team.
Not good.
He was the freshman of the year in the Southern Conference last year.
Pity.
So, tough blow there for the Bulldog basketball team. All right, that'll do it. Hope you enjoyed your trip to Clemson.
I did.
We'll be back tomorrow night with more leading up to the championship games and everything else going on. Thank you, Brian Leonard, for a great job. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.